Today, we're going to unpack a huge legal case from the UK's highest court. It's a really powerful story about a doctor's advice, a family's life, and a final decision that pretty much rewrote the rulebook on professional responsibility.
At the very heart of this is a question that seems simple, but is actually incredibly tricky. I mean, think about it. You get some professional advice, you trust it, but it turns out to be wrong. And because of that mistake, something totally unexpected and tragic happens. Who's on the hook for that? That's exactly what the court had to wrestle with.
So, to really get why the court decided what it did, we have to go back to the beginning, to the human story behind all the legal jargon. It all started with just one conversation in a doctor's office, a piece of advice that would change a family's life forever.
Okay, so here are the facts, and they're just tragic. A woman, Miss Meadows, was worried she might be a carrier for hemophilia, which is a serious blood disorder. So she did the right thing, the responsible thing, right? She went to her doctor, Dr. Khan, and asked to be tested. But, and this is the crucial part, the doctor made a mistake and told her she was in the clear. Believing that, trusting that advice, Miss Meadows decided to have a baby.
And this is where the story takes a turn, where it becomes so much more complicated and heartbreaking. Her son was born with hemophilia, the very condition she had tried to get tested for. But he was also diagnosed with severe autism, a condition that was completely separate from and unrelated to the doctor's mistake about hemophilia. So you can imagine, this led to a massive legal fight. The question wasn't if the doctor was negligent. I mean, that part was pretty clear. The real question was, what was she financially responsible for? And we're talking about a multi-million-pound question that had some huge ethical issues tied to it. The two sides were miles apart. Miss Meadows' argument was basically, look, if it weren't for that bad advice, my son would never have been born, so the doctor is responsible for all the cost of raising him, and that includes the cost for his autism. But the doctor's defense was, hold on, mine advice was only ever about the risk of hemophilia. It had nothing to do with autism, so I should only be liable for the costs related to the hemophilia. Now, to figure this whole mess out, the courts had to dig deep into their legal toolkit. They pulled out a really fundamental principle that's designed to draw the line on a professional's responsibility. Let's take a look at how they used it. And that tool? It's called the scope of duty principle. It sounds a bit technical, but it's a concept built for exactly these kinds of situations, to figure out what a professional is actually on the hook for when things go south. So here's the absolute key. The scope of duty isn't about blaming a person for every single bad thing that happens afterward. It really narrows the focus down. It makes the court ask one simple but really powerful question. What was the purpose of the advice in the first place? What was it meant to do? The court used this fantastic analogy to make it all crystal clear. Imagine a doctor checks a mountaineer's knee and says, yep, you're good to climb. The mountaineer goes, has a great climb, but then gets injured in a random avalanche. Can he sue the doctor? No way. The doctor's duty was about the knee, not about avalanches or general mountain safety. It's just not what the advice was for. After years of legal battles, this case climbed all the way to the top, to the UK Supreme Court. And their decision wasn't just going to be about this one family. It was going to set a huge precedent for any case like this in the future. So, in 2021, the final verdict came in, and the court didn't just give a simple answer. They actually created a practical, step-by-step roadmap to guide future judges through these unbelievably tough situations. They wanted to create clarity. And what they came up with is this new 6-question test. This framework is now the official playbook that courts in the UK use to figure out the scope of a professional's duty. Okay, let's just walk through this because each step is super important. First, actionable harm. Basically, is this a problem the law can even fix with money? Second, and this is the big one, scope of duty. What was the point of the advice? What specific question was it supposed to answer? Third, causation. Simple enough. Did the bad advice actually make the person do what they did? In this case, yes, she decided to have a child. Fourth, resulting loss. What did that decision actually cost in financial terms? Fifth, legal responsibility. This is the mountaineer question all over again. Is the harm that happened, the costs of autism, actually connected to the purpose of the original advice? And finally, step 6, recoverable. This is a last legal check. Are there any other big policy reasons why we wouldn't award money for this kind of thing? So when they ran the facts through this new framework, the Supreme Court came to a very clear decision. The purpose of Dr. Khan's advice was only about the risk of hemophilia. It was never about the risk of autism. So her legal responsibility was limited just to the costs that came from her son's hemophilia and not the separate costs of his autism. So the court's framework gives us legal clarity. It draws a really clear line in the sand for professionals. But it kind of leaves us with this big, lingering question, doesn't it? For a family that's facing these incredible challenges, does a clear legal answer actually feel fair? And that's where the cold logic of the law and raw human emotion really collide.